Hey guys, what's going on? My name's Hayden Crabtree. I'm a full-time commercial real estate investor, and I'm here today talking to you about how I bought a property with $0 of my own money that makes $108,000 a year. Yes, almost $10,000 a month is how much this property cash flows and profits, and it cost me no money of my own to do it. You see, one of the biggest excuses I hear people saying why they don't invest in real estate is they don't have any money to do it. Well, I'm going to show you a method today that I used to buy a property, again, $0 out of my own pocket, took none of my own money to do this deal that makes over $100,000 a year. So first we're going to go over how commercial real estate works. I want you guys to get a feel for the numbers. I want you to see with confidence how I knew that this was going to be a good deal for me and also a good deal for the person selling the property. So I'm going to dive in on this whiteboard exactly how commercial real estate works. Then we're going to go through a couple of the lessons that I learned in this deal that you can also apply to make something similar happen in your own life. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how commercial real estate works and how commercial real estate is valued. Now, in commercial real estate, we have space that we are renting. In my situation, this was a self-storage space. So if you ever see, it's the boxes where you roll up the door and you throw your couch in there and you roll it down and you pay rent every single month. Well, that's what kind of investing I do, but this same thing could be done for apartment complexes. It could be done for retail centers. It could be done for anything. It could be done for a house if you want to do a residential house. But first, we're going to dive in why specifically commercial real estate is good, and I really like commercial real estate. And the first thing to understand is that when we have space, how we're going to generate income for that property is we're going to rent it out to somebody. So if you have an apartment, you're going to rent it out to somebody that lives there. I do self-storage, so I'm going to rent it out to people who, in exchange for using that space on a monthly basis, they're going to pay me rent on the first of the month. So the first thing that we have is income. And again, this is the rent that people pay on a monthly basis. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do to value our commercial real estate is figure out what is our income. All right, and we're going to look at this on a monthly level. We're going to look at this on an annual level. So we're going to look at this for a year. Okay? Now, the next thing we need to do to figure out how much a piece of commercial real estate is worth is we need to look at the expenses. So expenses are going to be things that we're going to pay our property taxes. We're going to pay insurance. We're going to have to pay a manager to make sure they sign people up. We're going to have to pay a maintenance man to make sure the property looks good. We're going to have to pay website fees for a website that's online, or we're going to have to pay for Google ads if we're marketing a property. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to subtract out our expenses. We're going to subtract that out. Okay, so income minus expenses, it's very easy. Our income minus expenses, most people think about this in terms of profit, okay? But in real estate, specifically commercial real estate, income minus expenses is what we call net operating income. Or for short, we're going to call this NOI. And the reason this is important for you to understand is because all commercial real estate is valued based off of net operating income. Commercial real estate is essentially a business where somebody will buy and invest in that business for its revenue stream. So if we can figure out what that revenue stream is from that business, we can figure out how much a property is worth. The interesting thing about why I'm telling you all this is whenever I went to go buy this deal with $0 out of my own pocket, I had to know and feel confident that the net operating income on that property was a good deal. Well, here's the situation. What the owner wanted for the property was not a good deal. The owner was asking for way too much money for how much net operating income the property was producing. So I had to take it upon myself to figure out a solution that would both meet the seller's needs and it would meet my needs as a buyer and an investor on the property. Okay, so when we were looking to buy it and we were going through and talking to the seller, we were trying to figure out what was the net operating income on the property as is. So the net operating income on the property, we knew that the expenses were $108,000 a year because that's how much they were spending, and they were doing $22,000 a month, which comes out to $264,000 a year. So we know our income, we know our expenses. What is our net operating income? So 264 minus 108 gave us a net operating income of 156 a year. So we had a net operating income of $156 a year. And this is the number that we were using to value his property. So in commercial real estate, to get the value of a property equals NOI divided by a cap rate. Okay, so we're trying to figure out what is our value of our property, and we now have the current NOI. What we need to know is what is the cap rate. The cap rate is a percentage that we divide the NOI by in order to get our value. And all this is it simply says, as a percentage of how much I pay for this property, am I going to receive back in NOI a year? So if I wanted to receive 10% return on this property a year, I'd know I'd need to divide this by 10%, which is 0.10, and that would give me a value of 1.56 million. So by doing that and looking at it, I said, okay, if I want to do a 10% return, then I need to pay 1.56 million. Well, when I looked around at other similar properties to figure out what a cap rate is worth, I figured out that a cap rate in the market, okay, so I don't just get a 10% return. I have to see what other properties like this are getting for their NOI and what their cap rate is. Other properties were going at 7% cap rates. Okay, so what I had to do to figure out if the price that the seller wanted to sell it for was a good deal or not, I had to take the current NOI of 156 and divide it by 0.07. Okay, so whenever we actually did the math of 156,000 divided by 0.07, we get the current value of this person's property equals 2.28 million. Okay, so now I know based off of the numbers and the cap rate in the market, I said, okay, this guy's property is worth $2.28 million. So we should cut a deal, right? Well, here's the thing about this property is that the seller of the property didn't want $2.28 million. He wanted $3 million. And he said he wants $3 million because he believes in the future this property is it's in a high growth area, and in the future this property is going to be worth $3 million. So instead of blatantly disagreeing with him, I have to take his side. I have to look through his eyes, stand in his shoes, and I have to say, is the point he's making valid? And if it's not valid, are we going to be able to do a deal or not? Because I think the property's worth $2.2 million. He thinks that it's worth $3 million. So if I stand in his shoes, I can perhaps take a look at how he sees life. And if I'm thinking that I'm going to get $3 million for a property, when somebody comes along and offers me $2.2 million, I'm probably not going to take that deal, right? So now I have to take responsibility for the situation that he wants $3 million and I can only pay $2.2 million for the property. And I have to realize that if I'm going to overpay for a property, I have to be very, very confident. And I wasn't that confident enough to overpay for a property by almost $700,000. Okay, so I had to take it upon myself to figure out a way, because I really wanted to buy this property. I had to figure out a way to meet his needs, and I had to figure out a way to meet my needs. So what I did with this property seller is I showed him the math. I said, hey, look, here's the reality of the situation. You're making $264,000 a year. After $108,000 of expenses, you're netting $156,000. You want to sell this property because you're close to retirement and you want to get out of the business. I am trying to acquire more and more rental property. So how about I'll give you your $3 million, and to him, all he hears is he's going to get exactly what he wants. I said, I'll give you your $3 million, but I can only give you your $3 million in 5 years. Now, for him, he's going to get what he wants. He's just not going to get it now. And he said, no, I can't do that. And I said, look, you're making $156,000 a year now. What if I told you that I would give you $10,000 a month? So here's my pitch. I'll give you $10,000 a month, and down the road in 5 years, I'll give you the $3 million like you're asking for. Now he said, well, hey, that's pretty interesting, right? Because he's going to make $120,000 a year. He's not going to have to do anything. So he's only taken a $36,000 pay cut, but he has no more responsibility. He doesn't have to manage the property. He doesn't have to do anything. So he was sold on it. He said, okay, this sounds like a great idea. I'm going to get my $3 million. I'm still going to be making income from this property, and I'm going to achieve my goal of not having to take care of the property, not having to do the day-to-day work. So whenever I came up with this deal, he thought it was a no-brainer. And he said, well, how are we going to do this? Because he didn't want to legally sell me the property. He didn't want to be, he still wanted to own the property but do this deal. So I told him what we're going to do is it's this strategy. And this strategy is essentially just like purchasing a property. But what happens is, let's say that this is the property. Okay, we'll just use a house for an example. So whenever there's a property like this, and this person owns it, this is the seller, he owns the property, okay? He owns all rights to the property, and he legally is on what we call title. He owns title to the property. And then I'm over here, and I would like to buy the property from him. Okay, and whenever you sell a property, this title, which is attached to this property, normally it transitions from this person over to this person. So now this person is completely eliminated from the equation, and this person owns the property and owns the title to the property. Okay, but what I told him is I said, look, you hold on to the title of the property. You still get your $10,000 a month, $10K a month, and I'll do all the work on the property, and you still hold title to it. And what this is called, he gave me full rights to lease the property, to manage the property, to pay all the bills for the property, to collect all the income from the property. And what this is called a lease option or a master lease. And really the difference here is the lease option is that I'm going to lease the property. I'm going to pay you $10,000 a month in lease payments with the option to buy the property in 3 years. Now the difference between a lease option and a master lease is what I described, where I collect all income, I pay all bills, and I pay the landlord. He's the landlord in this situation. I pay the landlord a set amount, but there is no option to buy it at a later date. So I did a master lease with an option on the backside to buy the property for the $3 million like we talked about. Now, all this sounds great, but you're saying to yourself, well, Hayden, this guy's getting a really, really good deal, but what about you? You have to pay him. Let's erase all this. The property's making $156,000 a year, and you have to pay him $120,000 a year, so you're only left over with $36,000 a year for yourself. And $36,000 a year is not $100,000 a year like I'm telling you it is. Well, this is true, but also what happened throughout this entire process while I was looking at this property, I realized that this $22,000 a month that he was making, it was significantly under market. It would be like one gas station in town, while all the rest of the gas stations are selling gas for $3 a gallon. There's this other gas station over here that's selling gas for $2 a gallon. So he had below market rates. When other places in town were renting for $100, he was only charging $50. Okay, so I saw this spread and this ability to take all of his current customers and move their rates up. And that's one thing that's really, really good about self-storage, and why I love self-storage is because if these were apartments, when a tenant is on a lease for say 12 months, if you buy a property and tenants are under market rent, let's call this market rent and then current rent. If all your customers have long-term leases, you have to wait until their lease expires. So if this property had been an apartment complex and all of these customers had 12-month leases, I would have had to have waited 12 months before I could raise the income. But because this was self-storage, I could raise this rent in 30 days. So I bought this property and it was making $22,000 a month. I had my computer system analyze all of the different customers, how long they had been there, what they were paying, what the market rate was. And I had the computer system analyze and come up with a custom solution to tell me, raise each of these customers' rent to this amount, and here's how much you're going to be making extra. So after I did that, I took the property from $22,000 a month to 30 days later, after I did the rent raise, the property was making $28,000 a month. Okay? So if you see what happened is I saw that in the future he wanted $3 million. I saw that I wasn't going to be able to give him $3 million now, but I could give him $10,000 a month. And in the meantime, while I added value to the business through raising customer rents, I was going to be able to capture cash flow. Now, what happens to this extra $6,000 a month that we're making off of the rent? Did our expenses go up at all? The answer is no. Our expenses didn't go up whatsoever. So now what happens is we're going to keep this. Our expenses are going to stay the same, but now instead of making $22,000 a month and $264,000 a year, now we're making $28,000 a month, right? And now what we're doing is we're going up to $336,000 a year. So now we have $336,000 a year of income after we raise those customer rents. Our expenses didn't change at $108,000, but now our net operating income does change, right? So now 336 minus 108 gives us a net operating income of $228,000 a year. Okay? And I'm still giving him the exact same amount of money. I'm still cutting him a check for $10,000 every single month, and now the money that I get to keep left over is $228,000 minus the $120,000 I told him I'd give him. So now I'm keeping $108,000 a year. So what happened here, right? If we look at this, we raised the income, we kept the expenses the exact same, and the important part is that we knew before we actually went into this transaction and told him I was going to do this, that I'd be able to raise the rents. If I didn't see the opportunity to raise the rents, I would not promise to 5 years down the road give him his $3 million, right? But now I'm comfortable giving him his $3 million, because what happens whenever I take my new NOI after year one? What happens when I take my $228,000 and divide it by that 7 cap like we were talking about? Am I going to be able to give him the $3 million that he wants? The answer is yes, because if we do this math, $228,000 divided by 7%, the new value after I raise my rents on this property is going to be $3,257,000. So by the time it comes that I need to pay him his $3 million, I now have an asset in the property. This property is now worth, right, $3.2 million, $3.25 million, and I only have to pay the seller, I only have to pay him $3 million. So if I wanted to go out and sell this property today, I could go out and sell this property for $3.25 million. Somebody else would give me the $3.25 million. I would turn around and give the seller his $3 million, and I would keep $250,000. Or I could keep the property for the next 5 years, make $108,000 a year off of it, and at the end of that 5 years, when I need to pay him his money, I can sell the property. And again, I don't have to come up with any money of my own. I can just, for the next 5 years, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What I can do is I can make, there was negative $0 here, or $0. I didn't have to pay anything. It's going to make $108,000, $108,000, $108,000, $108,000. And then in year 5, it's going to make $108,000 plus the $250,000 from the spread between what I have to pay the property seller and the new property buyer. So my point here is, what is this? 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. This is $750,000 from this one deal, and it required no money out of my own pocket. But what it did require was that I understand how all of these numbers work. It required that I understood how market rates work and the ability to raise income on that property. And, most importantly, it required that I saw from the seller's perspective, because if I was just really stubborn and I wasn't willing to see from his perspective, then I could have told him, hey, all I'm willing to pay for this property is $2.2 million, because that's what it's worth. But because I was willing to see from his perspective, because I was willing to take a step into his shoes and understand, hey, if I can fulfill his needs and I can also fulfill my needs, this could be a win-win. He's going to get his $3 million. You know, I actually made that guy $800,000 because his property was only worth $2.2 million and I paid him $3 million. I did all the legwork for him of raising his property value. So he's happy because I made him money, right? I'm happy because I'm making money. The new person who buys it from me is happy because they're going to get a great investment property. It's a win-win for everybody. So a couple of the lessons that come out of this is, one, you need to be flexible. If all I thought in my brain was I can only buy properties, I don't do leases, I'm not willing to educate myself on master leases and lease options, this deal wouldn't exist, okay? The next thing is that you need to find a solution when no one else is willing to. I was not the first person to talk to this property seller. I was not the first buyer interested in buying this property right here. There was, 10 people that I was told that came before me and said, hey, I'd like to buy this property. And the people were offering 2.2 million, 2.4 million, 2.5 million. And he had multiple offers of people. He had one guy show up with a briefcase of cash and say, here's $2.5 million, sell me this property. And he wouldn't do it because he was stuck on the 3 million number. So a lesson is that you need to be flexible and see things that, hey, how can I give this guy 3 million? Not, I can't give this guy 3 million. So you need to be flexible. Again, you need to know your numbers. You need to know what NOI is. You need to know how to raise your income. You need to be confident of what your expenses on the property are going to be. Okay? And then maybe the most important lesson of this is that you need to build relationships. The property seller on this deal that I'm talking about, I met with this guy on 3 different occasions. He lived in a different state from me, 12 hours away. I flew and met him. I spent multiple days with him. I had lunch with him. I went to his house. I played with his granddaughter in the yard. I was willing to invest. I probably invested 15 to 20 hours in our relationship with no guarantee that it was going to pay off on the back end. So you need to be willing to invest in relationships with people who you can help and can help you at the same time. So the relationship was very, very important for getting this deal done. Okay, but I also had to be willing to throw out a solution that worked for both of us. And then again, you just want to look for a win-win situation, not something where you're stuck on 2.2, he's stuck on 3 million, we have no deal. You need to look for a win-win situation. So listen, if you enjoyed this video, if this was helpful, I ask you to come over and join my Facebook group. I have a Facebook group at haydencrabtree.com/community. You can come over and we talk every day about real estate. We talk about deals like this. Come over and join. There's no charge to join the Facebook group. And I also have just written a book. It's called Skip the Flip. It talks about why to do deals like this rather than house flipping. There's a ton of benefits that go into commercial real estate, whether it's tax benefits, leverage, using other people's money, creative deal structures. So I wrote a book called Skip the Flip. It teaches people to skip house flipping. You can pick up a free copy at haydencrabtree.com/free book. Again, that's haydencrabtree.com/free book. And just grab my book. It's free. You can read through it. You can learn about all the tax benefits. You can learn about how to use other people's money. You can learn more about how commercial real estate works. You can learn about all the different roles that are in the real estate community. So pick up the free book. Join us on Facebook. Join us and grab the free book. And I hope this taught you something. If it doesn't, reach out to me, and I'll be with you soon. Help you answer your questions. Thanks.